In my past life, the crown prince demanded I marry his disabled younger brother. I fought it with my life. He framed my father for embezzlement, driving my mother to death by headbutting a wall. He severed my Achilles tendons and imprisoned me in the cold palace to freeze me to death. When I awoke again, His Majesty asked if I would marry Prince Zhao. I humbly thanked him. This humble maiden willingly consents. I was reborn at 17. Back then, Crown Prince Chu Heng had just survived a calamity, rescued by a mute girl. After recovering, he secretly brought her back to the capital, hiding her in the Eastern Palace. Their hearts were in harmony, vowing to marry in splendor once obstacles were cleared. I was the foremost obstacle they needed to overcome. In my previous life, my absurd clinging forced him to marry me. Childhood sweethearts, bound by marriage vows. His first act upon ascending the throne was to exterminate my entire family. My father, a lifelong loyal subject devoted to the state, was falsely accused of corruption because of me, bearing that shame until his death. This lifetime, I must prevent all of this. My birthday banquet was lavishly celebrated. After all, my father was the current chancellor and had once served as the emperor's tutor. My mother, moreover, came from a distinguished noble family. My status was more exalted than that of some disfavored princesses. Everyone speculated about my marriage prospects, the emperor included. After several cups of wine, he asked me in jest if I would consider marrying Prince Zhao. Prince Chu Li, son of the late empress, had suffered a severe illness in childhood that left him crippled, his legs paralyzed. It was precisely his withdrawal from the succession race that allowed Chu Heng to emerge victorious. Had Chu Li been healthy, Chu Heng would never have had the slightest chance of becoming crown prince. In my previous life, I refused the emperor. He knew I loved the crown prince and did not blame me. Only sighing deeply later, I learned it was Chu Heng who had suggested this marriage to the emperor. He would rather forfeit the chancellor's support than marry the mute girl as his legitimate wife. The emperor sighed for my misplaced devotion. This time, I refused to repeat that mistake. I glanced toward Chu Heng's seat. A smile played at his lips, his beautiful almond-shaped eyes narrowing as he watched the maid pouring his wine. The mute girl blushed under his gaze, quietly pinching the hem of his robe. The emperor noticed my eyes and was about to sigh when he froze in shock. I knelt on the ground. I am willing to marry Prince Zhao now. Everyone's faces were filled with shock, including Chu Heng, who thought he had everything under control. His face turned ashen, though it was unclear what exactly angered him. His Majesty's voice was deep. Inin, do you understand what you're saying? I spoke of marrying Prince Zhao. My nose stung. His Majesty truly cherished me. He clearly wanted me to marry Prince Zhao too, yet still urged me to think it through. Father paced restlessly, desperate to plead my case immediately. After all, everyone knew how deeply I had once loved Chu Heng. I bowed in reverent gratitude. Your humble daughter. Accepts willingly. Willingly indeed. The emperor's expression shifted unpredictably. Finally, he set down his wine cup, rose, and stepped before me. Inin, he said, I swear to you, Prince Zhao shall have no other consort in this lifetime. A king's word is final. With these words, His Majesty sealed off all avenues for Prince Zhao to take concubines. Sympathetic glances flooded toward the prince. Following the crowd's gaze, I studied my future husband for the first time, seated in his wheelchair, his skin an unhealthy pallor. He shrugged slightly with an innocent expression. Father, how could your son possibly take concubines? Most men would struggle to utter such words, yet Prince Zhao voiced it so openly, making me regard this disabled prince with newfound respect. The banquet continued. Urged on by the crowd, I took a seat beside Prince Zhao. He poured me a cup of milk tea. My apologies for the hardship, he said. The milk tea was cloyingly sweet, yet surprisingly to my taste. I flashed Chu Heng a defiant smile. It's fine. Better than marrying the crown prince. The mute girl stood behind Chu Heng, her eyes fixed on me with icy hatred. She had been exactly like this in my previous life. Before Chu Heng, she was feigned and delicate. Before me, she was venomous and cruel. I'll never forget how she strangled the infant in its swaddling clothes with her own hands, then feigned despair to attempt suicide. To appease her, Chu Heng personally severed my Achilles tendons and allowed palace servants to seize my last blanket for warmth. What did I think of in my final moments before freezing to death? If I could do it all over again, I'd send this pair of dogs straight to hell. I drank a few more cups and stumbled back to my courtyard in a haze. The courtyard was eerily quiet. The maidservant who usually attended me had vanished. Left to fend for myself, I lit a candle. The flickering light cast Chu Hang's stern features into sharp relief. He sat on a soft couch, draped in a gray cloak, his fingers gliding over the strings of a zither. Chu Hang was skilled in music. This ancient zither was a gift I had specially sought out for him. Yin, come here. His fingers glided across the strings, drawing forth a melody. I didn't move. Your Highness, you should return to the Eastern Palace. Why did I agree? He set down the zither, drew near, and touched my chin as he had done before, as if teasing a kitten or a puppy. Why did you agree to marry Prince Zhao? Are you angry about Ruor's situation? My head was spinning. Having just awakened from the nightmare of my past life, maintaining a normal demeanor around Chu Hang was already an immense struggle. The moment his fingers reached out, I instinctively wanted to bite them off. I fought to suppress my emotions, avoiding his touch. The window stood open. The night wind rustled softly, brushing against my exposed skin, a sensation that always reminded me of my desperate struggle in the cold palace. I clenched my fists with all my strength, using the pain of my nails digging into my flesh to stifle my resentment toward him. Head bowed, I murmured self-mockingly, "Isn't this what you wanted?" Chu Hang froze. I lifted my head and gazed at him with intense passion, my eyes burning with love. "Whatever you desire, I will fulfill it for you, whether it costs happiness or my life." Chu Hang was so stunned he nearly fled in panic. He was intelligent enough, yet utterly clueless in matters of the heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so thoroughly outmaneuvered by that mute girl. Perhaps the imperial consort's overbearing nature made him particularly susceptible to vulnerable, stubborn women. This was a lesson I'd learned from the mute girl, Miao Ruor. It proved remarkably effective. My wedding to Prince Zhao was set for half a year later. The capital buzzed with the news. Confined to my boudoir awaiting the wedding, I ignored every invitation, until the Eastern Palace banquet celebrating the Crown Prince's coming of age. In my past life, I'd spent half a year preparing for his coming-of-age ceremony, spending a fortune to find the ancient zither, the very one he'd played in my chambers that time. That zither was named Threads of Affection. Later, he gave it to Miao Ruor. She removed the strings and stuck them in a slender-necked vase as decoration. Like my threads of affection, each one snapped. She was a mute village girl, ignorant of music, yet she knew how to manipulate Chu Hang's heart. Meanwhile, the chain skills I had painstakingly learned for Chu Hang were, in his eyes, utterly insignificant. I carefully wiped the strings, treasuring them meticulously. On the day of Chu Hang's coming of age, I deliberately wore a long dress of wisteria green silk brocade. After presenting my gift, I retired to the inner chambers with several well-connected young ladies. As silver charcoal embers danced, I casually shed my cloak. "Oh, this gown, it's identical to Miss Miao's." "Impossible." This was bestowed by the imperial consort herself. I feigned astonishment. A flash of smugness crossed Miao Ruor's face. I shook my head slightly, returning to warming my hands. Perhaps because of my past life's ending, I'm exceptionally sensitive to the cold. Every day, I have the charcoal fires stoked until the air is warm and cozy. The young maids in the mansion scramble to work in my courtyard to keep warm. "Hey, Miss Miao, where did you get this?" Miao Ruor seemed a bit awkward as she wrote on a piece of paper. "I don't know," she added. "It was given to me by His Highness the Crown Prince." The girls instantly hushed their voices. Miao Ruor looked flustered, seeking help from her attendant beside her. The maid rolled her eyes dramatically. After a moment, one girl finally asked, Miss Miao, what exactly is your relationship with His Highness the Crown Prince? The attendant offered tea pastries, signaling Miao Ruor to watch her words. Uncertain how to respond, Miao Ruor glanced at me in panic. I opened my mouth and mouthed a phrase to her. She shot me a fierce glare, gathered her courage, picked up the brush, and wrote, "His Highness said he would marry me." Before the ink had dried, the inner hall fell deathly silent. The questioning girl rolled her eyes, turned her head, and whispered with the other young ladies. Though their voices were low, she heard every word. They were cursing her, just as my earlier lip-synced words had accused her of shamelessness. Her face flushed crimson, eyes brimming with tears, a sight that stirred pity even in me. When Chu Heng entered, her tears fell perfectly timed. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, then rose coquettishly to follow him. Unaware of the commotion, Chu Heng habitually waited for my explanation. I bit my lip, saying nothing. My look of grievance was no less than Miao Ruor's. A bold young lady sneered, "Your Highness, if you find none of us to your liking, just say so. There's no need to bring this creature to humiliate us. Since the Crown Prince already has a favored consort, we won't impose further." With that, she rose to leave. The others hurried after her. Chu Heng, utterly bewildered, instinctively stopped me. "What's going on?" Before I could speak, the girl pulled me back half a step. "Your Highness, the imperial consort cherishes Enin. The robes she bestows must be one of a kind. That you would even vie for an imperial gift meant for Miss Miao, such devotion is truly enviable." Only when Miao Ruor and I stood side by side did Chu Heng finally notice our identical dresses. I didn't give him a chance to speak. My voice trembled as I said, "I thought, at least this dress would be uniquely mine. The imperial consort treats me as the future crown princess consort, but her true aim is to use me to control the prime minister's household. She bestows many imperial gifts upon me, yet few are truly unique treasures. This dress was one such exception. It could be custom-made at any tailor shop in the city. I deliberately dug it out from the bottom of my trunk precisely to cause a scene without drawing attention. In my past life, when I saw Miao Ruor wearing this dress, I insisted she apologize. Chu Heng didn't even remember this was an imperial gift. He only thought me spoiled and indulged, cherishing Miao Ruor, that delicate little white flower, all the more. So this time, I deliberately wore the same dress. He couldn't pretend not to see it. I was soon to marry Prince Zhao. With the imperial consort losing the chancellor's mansion as her ally, she would inevitably seek another high-ranking consort for the crown prince. She used the coming-of-age ceremony as an excuse to summon every renowned noble lady in Xinjiang. It worked to my advantage. After Miao Ruor's outburst, everyone knew the crown prince favored a mute girl. If he wouldn't even take the chancellor's legitimate daughter for a mute girl, what chance did they have? The noble ladies of Xinjiang were proud and haughty. Sharing a husband with a mute girl was an insult. They'd never accept the possibility of being dominated by her. The coming-of-age banquet ended in disarray. Chu Heng couldn't fathom it. How could gifting a mute girl a garment cause such an uproar? Soon, both the emperor and the imperial consort learned of the mute girl's existence. Chu Heng knew well that a tree standing tall in the forest is sure to be struck by the wind. The crown prince's affection for a vulnerable mute girl became an unbearable burden. That's why in my previous life, he hid her away so carefully. Even I never truly regarded her as anything special. The emperor summoned the crown prince to the palace that very night. According to palace attendants, he smashed 3 white jade wine cups. I surmised the emperor demanded Chu Heng dispose of the mute girl swiftly. Chu Heng refused, thus incurring the emperor's wrath. A prince may be passionate, may be capricious, but the crown prince may not. After being reprimanded, Chu Heng slipped into the rear courtyard of the prime minister's residence. Having grown up together and possessing noble status, The servants dared not obstruct him. Why is this zither still here? When he arrived, I was tuning it. Hearing this, I was somewhat speechless. Where else would it be? This isn't a gift for me. In a flash, something occurred to him. You haven't given me a gift this year. His tone was utterly certain. I gave a perfunctory reply. I did give you one. It's with the other lady's gifts. I had given him the 4 treasures of the study, though valuable. They required no thought. In the past, fearing Chu Heng might confuse my gift with others, I always secretly gave him a genuine present as well. This year, my preparation was this very zither. Chu Heng sensed my coldness. You're still sulking? I told you that robe wasn't an imperial gift from the consort. A faint frown appeared on his brow. How had I never noticed before that his patience was so thin? Then, Your Highness, take me out for the autumn hunt? I knew when to stop and changed the subject. If I recall correctly, a fire broke out during the autumn hunt, and Miao Ruor was gravely injured saving the crown prince. After the imperial physicians treated her, she miraculously regained her voice. The last incident upset those young ladies. This would be the perfect chance to let them witness Your Highness's heroic spirit. Chu Heng's gaze softened. Those were all candidates for crown princess chosen by my mother. Are you truly not opposed? I lifted my head to meet his eyes. I've said it before, for Your Highness. I'd do anything. Ruer. Miss Miao is kind-hearted and holds a place in Your Highness's heart. We must select a matriarch who won't mistreat her. Chu Heng fell silent. After being scolded by both father and mother, he had temporarily abandoned the idea of making Miao Ruor the crown princess. My words were meant to consider his situation thoroughly. Are you truly not bothered? My voice choked as I held back tears. Shaking my head. It's fine. As long as you remember me, that's enough. Chu Heng embraced me, and I leaned against his shoulder. His gaze was icy. I felt like vomiting. Only after I spoke every possible word in Chu Heng's favor did that group of noble ladies finally agree to leave. Most of them were friendly with me, and the looks they gave me were pure disappointment. Just before departure, the emperor shot Miao Ruor a cold glance. Chu Heng shifted his body, shielding her behind him. I studied her closely and noticed she'd grown noticeably thinner since our last meeting. Who knows what new ploy she'd resorted to. I was originally to share a carriage with the noble ladies, but the limping Chuli insisted on joining us. I had no choice but to care for him in the same carriage. When dismounting, Chuli's entire weight pressed down on me as he grinned and said, "You've been so kind, Enin." I gritted my teeth. "Your Highness, you flatter me." Chu Heng and several princes charged ahead on their tall steeds, whips crackling with spirited vigor, drawing their bows, releasing arrows, and bringing down game, all in one fluid motion. Pushing Prince Zhao's wheelchair, I noticed the downturned corners of his mouth, a hint of disappointment. "Want to try?" I handed him my bow and arrows. He took them blankly. I run incredibly fast. "Even pushing you won't slow me down." When I was young, I trained with a military camp instructor just to find common ground with Chu Heng. Running was no problem at all. Prince Zhao's lips curved upward, eager to try. We dared not venture deep, lingering only near the hunting grounds entrance. Soon, Chu Heng drove a fox toward us. King Zhao drew his bow and struck the fox's foreleg. It hopped limping onto my foot. Suddenly, I felt reluctant to continue. "Paying homage to your mountain, are we?" Chuli teased. The little fox stared back at me with wide, round eyes. I couldn't resist. I stroked its fluffy head. "If you like it, keep it," I started to say, but an arrow whistled through the air. King Zhao grabbed the fox by the ear and hoisted it up, the sharp arrow embedding itself into the tree trunk. My brother may have trouble with his legs, but his arms are incredibly strong, Chu Heng said coldly. This sudden turn of events startled me. In a daze, I seemed to see my parents' blood splattering again as they took their own lives in prison. My whole body trembled. Chuli gripped my wrist, forcing me to steady myself. Chu Heng dismounted and walked toward me step by step. 1 step. 2 steps, 3 steps, closer and closer. I murmured softly. King Zhao leaned closer, hearing my mutterings. His brows furrowed, then relaxed moments later. "I will help you." I stared at him in disbelief, trying to confirm whether he had heard me clearly. What had I said? Or rather, had I heard him clearly? What had he said? Een. Do you like foxes? Chu Heng asked me. The mute girl, seeing him dismount, immediately clung to him. A cold wind blew past, carrying a peculiar scent. It dissipated quickly. It didn't seem like incense, but rather a special perfume. I looked at Miao Ruor. She smiled at me. That smile felt eerily unsettling, no matter how I looked at it. Suddenly, disaster struck. A leopard burst out from deep within the forest. The guards sprang into action as if facing a major threat, shouting to protect the master. They tried to rush over to shield us, but it was too late. The leopard charged with pinpoint accuracy, straight toward Chu Heng, or rather, toward Miao Ruor behind him. Chu Heng held only his bow. No arrows. Subduing a leopard barehanded was virtually impossible. He rolled several times with Miao Ruor in his arms. Only after tumbling out of the leopard's reach did he panic and look my way. Chu Li stood immovable as a mountain, pulling me behind his wheelchair. He drew his bow, aiming at the leopard. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. This was my custom-made bow and arrow set, lighter and more compact than standard equipment, yet also less lethal. It couldn't even kill a small fox with a single shot, let alone this ferocious leopard. Whoosh! The whistling of the arrow sliced past my ear. The leopard collapsed, its blood splattering onto my robes. This time, I felt no terror. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. Chu Li removed his cloak and wrapped it around me. Leaning close to my ear, he said solemnly, "I will help you. Kill him." Chu Li's single arrow slays the leopard, delighting His Majesty. He lavishes rewards upon all present, except Chu Heng. Everyone witnessed it. At the moment of life or death peril, His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, abandoned his brothers and childhood sweetheart, clutching the mute girl to flee. That night, Chu Heng knelt at the palace gate. Court attendants bustled in and out, frozen in silence. His Majesty bestowed upon me a peacock-patterned robe, exquisitely crafted. The peacock embroidery was lifelike. As I received the gift, I happened to stand beside Chu Heng. The eunuch's voice was shrill. His Majesty decrees this robe is the only one of its kind in the world. Should any similar garment appear, the offender shall be punished for usurping imperial authority. The emperor was standing up for me. A garment casually bestowed by the imperial consort. It both humiliated Chu Heng and earned me an imperial gift. Quite the bargain. Truly, only the child who cries loudest gets fed. Both the emperor and Chu Heng fall for this tactic. He knelt on the cold stone slabs, his back rigidly straight, though he was being punished. The look in his eyes as he gazed at me was filled with pity. I couldn't help but recall the past. And no matter how innocent the first was, he would only scold me, calling me unreasonable and demanding. In his eyes, only Miao Ruor existed, innocent and carefree, gentle and understanding. If that's the case, then let this gentle, understanding flower wither before his very eyes. I accepted the gift, bowed my head in gratitude, and turned to leave. From start to finish, I never once glanced at Chu Heng. His gaze remained fixed on my retreating figure. Just as in those days, when I always followed him. That evening, the noble ladies came to my room to warm themselves and chat, taking the opportunity to admire the peacock feather cloak. How exquisite! Look at this needlework. No artisan in the realm could match such skill. Truly, it outshines the robe bestowed by the imperial consort 1,000-fold. As I instructed my maid to brew tea for them, I caught a figure lingering by the doorway. I smiled deliberately. His Majesty specifically mentioned this robe as one of a kind. No counterfeit could ever compare. The figure stiffened. The Crown Prince is truly amusing. He actually treats that mute girl as a proper Crown Princess. He had her entertain guests at his coming-of-age ceremony, brought her along on the autumn hunt. Even then, he only cared about saving her. The noble lady gently clasped my hand. You mustn't make such foolish mistakes again. I scanned the room, taking in the noble ladies present. Most of them were spoiled and headstrong, often clashing with me. They were acutely aware they'd likely be traded away as bargaining chips by their families. They held no yearning for love, yet they admired my one-sided devotion to the Crown Prince. They especially looked down upon that mute girl who'd appeared out of nowhere, clinging to Chu Heng like a parasitic bindweed. Their sympathy for me only deepened, even though I, like them, had once been a contender for the crown princess title. And no matter how fiercely we clashed openly, we never resorted to underhanded tactics behind each other's backs, because we disdained such things. But Meow Roar was an opponent unlike any I'd ever faced. Her excessive fragility and hypocrisy were transparent to me, yet I couldn't outmaneuver her. In the end, I was utterly defeated. I clasped her hand firmly. Rest assured, I couldn't make the same mistake twice. She seemed somewhat taken aback. The other noble ladies were equally stunned. Given my status and my heart belonging solely to Chu Heng, I'd never been particularly close to them. Our interactions had always been purely superficial. Now that I was extending goodwill, they were naturally delighted, both publicly and privately. Befriending me was always advantageous. The tea is ready. The maid Li Qi entered carrying a pot of milk tea. She nodded to me. I personally poured tea for each noble lady. We chatted for a long time. Later, our spirits lifted, and we even shared a pot of warm wine. It was late into the night before they finally returned to their respective courtyards. Li Qi also attended to my washing and bedtime. No one noticed that Meow Roar, who should have been at the crown prince's palace, had secretly slipped into my courtyard. The maid Qing Shui shook me awake. Dazed and disoriented, everything I saw was shaped like a wine flask. Miss, run! Our courtyard is on fire. Those words jolted me awake. In my past life, an accident occurred during the autumn hunt. The crown prince's palace caught fire. Meow Roar, a frail young woman, carried the unconscious crown prince out of the palace. Her own injuries were severe, and she nearly didn't survive. After this incident, she had truly earned her place in the imperial court. Chu Heng, in particular, was utterly devoted to her. Seeing me still dazed, Qing Shui casually grabbed a garment, wrapped it around me, and pulled me toward the exit. Just as we reached the doorway, I remembered something and shoved her out. I turned back toward the flames. She screamed herself hoarse at the entrance. I nearly forgot, the imperial robe bestowed by His Majesty remained inside. The peacock-embroidered coat glowed even more splendidly in the flames. I snatched a small ember and hurled it at the intricate peacock embroidery. The sparks ignited the fabric instantly. In an instant, the lower hem was consumed by flames. I pulled out the water pouch I'd prepared earlier and doused the sparks. Then I rushed forward, grabbed the coat, and ran outside. Just as the flames threatened to engulf me, a guard burst in. "Forgive me," he said. He swept me into his arms and flew out with a single stride. Just as Li Qi had said, his lightness skills were formidable. This blaze even alarmed His Majesty. He stood exposed to the wind until I emerged safely, only then exhaling deeply and sitting down. Meow Roar clutched Chu Heng's robe hem tightly, her face as pale as paper. I gave her a casual glance, and she trembled even harder. I beamed at His Majesty like showing off a treasure. "I brought the robe you bestowed upon me." The hem of the peacock-patterned robe was scorched black. My own garments bore several holes from the heat, evidence of how desperately I'd fought to save that coat. The Emperor stared at me for a long moment before finally saying, "It's merely a garment, nothing more important than a human life. It's different." My expression was stubborn. "This was bestowed by Your Majesty, unique in all the land." Saying this, I gently traced the skirt's hem. Alas, it was too late. Chu Heng's gaze toward me was complex. My fiancé's expression, however, was far more straightforward. It was filled entirely with worry and heartache. I turned my head, unwilling to meet his eyes. I couldn't bear to see his concern, even less could I bear to deceive him. "Your Majesty." The eunuch on duty knelt on the ground. Before the fire started, this subordinate saw Miss Meow in Miss Song's courtyard. Li Qi and I exchanged a secret glance. She shook her head, signaling this ring wasn't her doing. The eunuch scolded, "How dare you? Why didn't you speak up earlier?" The young eunuch trembled. Miss Meow was only lingering at the door. She didn't enter the room. "Father Emperor Roar, shut up." Chu Heng was abruptly cut off by the Emperor's harsh voice. He wrapped his arm around Meow Roar's shoulder. A posture of unwavering protection. It really was so foolish. Then more and more people came forward, claiming to have seen Meow Roar acting suspiciously in various places. The time, out of deference to the crown prince, no one dared to approach and question her. The testimonies pieced together a complete chain of arson. Meow Roar knelt in terror, clutching Chu Heng's arm and shaking her head frantically. So pitifully helpless, Chu Heng grew anxious, unexpectedly shifting the burden onto me. "Een, you said Ruar is inherently kind. You believe her, right?" I feigned hesitation. Then, following Chu Hang's lead, I addressed Miao Ruor. Miss Miao, if you can tell us where you were when the fire started, I will believe you. The emperor frowned in disapproval. Chu Hang's eyes brimmed with gratitude. I lifted my gaze to meet his. His eyes were red-rimmed, filled with unmistakable sorrow. He turned his head, unable to look at me. A maid brought paper and brush. Miao Ruor picked up the brush, then hesitated. In the end, she didn't write a single word. Ruor, I sneered coldly. Of course she dared not write. Because at that time, she was setting fire to the Eastern Palace. She never imagined that the fire she started in the Eastern Palace would end up burning my courtyard. She desperately needed an opportunity to speak up. She could trade it for the reputation of sacrificing herself to save the crown prince. In her original plan, this was supposed to be her comeback, not being used by me to leave her with no defense. I stared at her palm. Miss Miao, how did you get fire oil on your hands? I forcibly seized her wrist. Song Yin. Chu Heng found me relentless, glaring at me with displeasure. He thought I'd be the same as before, fearless of heaven and earth, yet terrified of angering him. Alas, this was the final act between us. Speak! Why is there lamp oil on your hands? You burned my peacock coat. I suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Miao Ruor by the collar. She gasped for air, coughing violently. Chu Heng shielded Miao Ruor and shoved me to the ground. It was an instinctive move. After pushing me, he seemed flustered himself. He reached out to help me up, but I pushed him away. Your Highness. She was the one who set the fire. Li Ji helped me stand, and I leaned heavily on her, barely able to hold myself up. And yet, Your Highness still protects her? His face darkened with anger. He was unwilling to lose me, this devoted and useful pawn. Yet he also refused to let this delicate flower suffer harm. Crown Prince, the Emperor urged. He too wanted answers. After a moment's silence, Chu Heng knelt. Your Majesty, I believe Ruor. I buried my face in Li Ji's shoulder, shivering slightly. Perfect. Chu Heng and I had severed ties completely. This charade had left my voice hoarse. Now, lying in the carriage, I played the role of a heartbroken lover. Chu Li drew the window curtain shut and refused another noble lady who wished to board and comfort me. Eat less osmanthus cake. He snatched the half-eaten cake from my hand and slowly consumed it himself. Truly a prince taught by His Majesty himself. Every gesture radiates extraordinary elegance. Stingy, I grumbled. Chu Li handed me the portable heater. Do you want everyone to see that Miss Song, who fainted from grief and washed her face with tears, looks noticeably plump when she steps down? I quickly touched my chin. Thankfully, I'm still very slender. He chuckled softly. He was teasing me after all. The relationship between Chu Li and me is quite delicate now. To outsiders, His Royal Highness Prince Zhao is deeply infatuated with me. He stays by my side, accompanying me, even though he knows I still harbor feelings for the Crown Prince. To me, though we're hardly acquainted, he seems to read my every thought. He supports my every move without reservation, silently cleaning up after me, like having the eunuchs fabricate a complete timeline of Miao Ruor's arson. Or now, acting alongside me to cover up the lie. I ask myself, what value do I hold that this prince would exploit? Everything he does is purely helping me. Could it truly be deep affection? Chu Li noticed me staring at him. What? Can't wait to marry into the royal household? I shook my head. I was wondering, why are you helping me? He paused, then froze. A look of deep nostalgia washed over his face. When I first became crippled, I couldn't accept it. I went on a hunger strike in the palace. wallowing in self-pity. You happened to wander into my chambers then, dragging me aside to spout a bunch of nonsense. His smile broadened. You were only 7 or 8 back then, such a chatterbox. You annoyed me so much I had no choice but to eat properly. I don't remember any of that. But it's true, getting lost in the palace was a regular occurrence for me. Mostly because I'd follow Chu Heng, only for him to deliberately lose me. And that's why. Chu Li nodded. Back then, the entire palace was shrouded in gloom and lifelessness. Only you were vibrant, lively, and full of spirit. But I feared eavesdroppers and dared not speak plainly. Attempting to murder the crown prince is tantamount to regicide. Was it worth it? All for a little warmth from my childhood? Chu Li gazed at me tenderly, making my ears burn crimson. He spoke slowly. As a child, I fell ill and became crippled in both legs. It was the Empress Consort's doing. So, Yi Nin, trust me without reservation. Helping you is helping myself. The little fox crawled out from behind me. Its leg injury had healed, and it sniffed its way straight to the osmanthus cakes. I stroked its soft fur. Yet my gaze kept drifting to Chu Li's legs, hidden beneath the blanket. I once knew a disabled distant relative whose legs resembled withered tree trunks. Was King Zhao the same? Such a noble gentleman. So elegant and distinguished. Perhaps my sympathy was too obvious. For Chu Li stroked my head. That gesture was just like how I stroked the little fox. Regarding the autumn hunt arson incident, His Majesty ultimately imposed a minor punishment with a major warning, forbidding Miao Ruor from riding in a carriage. Chu Heng accompanied her on foot. The noble lady who came to visit me spoke of this with utter disdain. Chu Heng fancies himself a master of romance. Little did he know he'd severed his own path to marrying the noble lady as his nominal crown princess. This is precisely why I insisted they both come. Word of mouth can never compare to seeing it with one's own eyes. And the emperor had not issued any decree to silence the matter. Soon, the entire court knew that Chu Heng had defied the emperor for the sake of beauty. The imperial consort summoned me to the palace. She claimed it was to discuss matters. But each time, she subtly steered me towards seeking the chancellor's assistance. I feigned illness and ignored her. The matrons sent by the imperial consort were rebuffed several times. Finally, she gave up on me, keeping it hidden from Chu Heng. She went straight after Miao Ruor. Rumor has it that as soon as Miao Ruor returned to the eastern palace, she was struck by a persistent high fever and tormented by nightmares. The imperial physicians, unwilling to risk offending the emperor by treating her, left Chu Heng no choice but to lavishly hire a private physician. Alas, it was all to no avail. With no other recourse, Chu Heng sent word to me through intermediaries. I didn't even glance at it, I burned it immediately. He waited several days before finally coming in person. This time, he used the main gate. The side paths were heavily guarded, under my orders. The crown prince was barred from passing. Father received him in the front hall. He always favored me. Li Ji vividly recounted to my parents how the crown prince had wronged me. It made mother weep. That Chu Heng could still sit and drink tea was only because father prioritized the greater good. After half a pot of tea, I finally appeared. His reason for seeking me out was simple. He wanted me to petition the emperor to send a court physician to treat Miao Ruor. Upon hearing his request, father nearly dismissed him outright. I offered a faint smile. Your Highness, this humble daughter is unwilling. Chu Heng slammed his hand on the table. Then, forcing himself to calm down, he said, Yi Nin, stop this nonsense. At worst, I'll promise not to appoint Ruor as crown princess. I nearly burst out laughing. Even now, he still thought I was merely jealous and petty. That offering a slight concession would make me obediently comply. Promising not to appoint her as crown princess? Did he really think his position as crown prince would last much longer? Your Highness, I am about to be married. To avoid gossip, it would be best if we no longer met. Song Yin. Chu Heng rose, blocking my path. Have you truly decided not to save Ruor? Your Highness. I sneered. Is Miss Miao truly only unwell? Prince Zhao told me that as a child. He suffered from a severe illness with symptoms just like Miss Miao's. Chu Heng's face instantly turned cold. It seems he wasn't entirely unaware that the imperial consort crippled Prince Zhao's legs. What happens next between that mother and son is none of my business. I wonder who is more ruthless, the imperial consort or the crown prince. A few days later, Li Qi told me that Miao Ruor had recovered. And through misfortune came fortune, this mute girl could now speak. I watched the pigeons at Prince Zhao's residence outside my window, soaring high then low, playing with the little fox. Li Ji. Spread the news. I truly am not skilled at underhanded schemes. Even if I could start over, I would only mimic the tactics Miao Ruor used in my past life. For instance, she had a high monk spread rumors that I was incompatible with her, forcing Chu Heng to relocate to my palace. This time, I'd use those same rumors to bestow upon her unimaginable wealth. Rumors spread throughout Xinjiang that Miao Ruor possessed the destiny of a phoenix. A destiny more precious than that of His Royal Highness Prince Zhao, the son of the true dragon. When Prince Zhao fell gravely ill years ago, though his life was saved, he sacrificed his legs. Yet Miao Ruor, afflicted with the same symptoms, emerged unscathed, even curing her own muteness. Rumors, like a tiger born of 3 men, grew louder and louder. Soon, they reached the imperial palace. The imperial consort urgently summoned me once more. This time, I did not refuse. I deliberately wore the white fox fur cloak newly bestowed by His Majesty. It made the little fox at home snarl and bare its teeth. Yin, I have always favored you as crown princess. Her nails were painted a vivid red, like a demoness from a storybook. I offered no reply. Alas, the crown prince is simply too stubborn. She spoke of regret, yet her eyes brimmed with calculation. The crown prince and I were never meant to be. She likely didn't believe I'd truly given up on Chu Heng. Fearing I might meddle again, it seemed she'd truly taken the phoenix's fate to heart. Then I might as well give her a little push. Your Majesty, this humble servant has something to say, though I'm unsure if it's proper. She motioned for me to speak. Truthfully, this humble servant cannot forget His Highness. If your Highness would be so kind as to assist me, I implore you to persuade His Majesty to revoke his decree. She froze completely. What do you mean? You still want to be crown princess? I'm innocent. Is that not possible? Your Highness, you've always cherished me. This small request. Song Yin. The imperial consort warned me, don't entertain such delusions. Hunger is the heir apparent, and Ruor is the phoenix. They will wed soon. Ruor is the crown princess, the future empress. But you just said you favored me? I was on the verge of tears. She sighed. I had hoped that even after marrying Prince Zhao, you could still be useful to me. I never imagined you could be so utterly foolish. Nanny, take my jade pendant to Ruor. She is the daughter-in-law I have chosen. As for the rest of you, don't even dare to dream. The imperial consort drove me out of the palace. Prince Zhao happened to be leaving the council chamber. He took me home on his way. The imperial consort panicked. She even sent the jade pendant, afraid I might go mad. Chuli grasped my icy palm. Yin, you needn't do this for me. No. I refused outright. Besides my parents, Chuli was the kindest person to me. I will make everyone know who truly caused his suffering. The jade pendant delivery was meant to be secret, but I deliberately arranged for a young maid to accidentally reveal the news to Miao Ruor ahead of time. That foolish girl, accompanied by 2 rows of maids and servants, came to the gate to express her gratitude. Thus, all the citizens of Xinjing learned that the crown prince was to wed Miao Ruor, the girl marked by the phoenix's destiny. It was rather amusing. Chu Heng himself was the last to know. The emperor dispatched the chief steward to deliver the imperial decree. He bestowed upon me the title of princess, permitting my marriage outside the palace. My dowry was to be arranged with the pomp befitting a legitimate princess. He also bestowed 7 pearls upon Prince Zhao, making him the first 7-pearl prince in the dynasty. His status now rivaled that of the crown prince. The entire court trembled in fear, knowing the emperor's wrath had been unleashed. The more lavishly he rewarded me and Prince Zhao, the more evident his disappointment in the imperial consort and the crown prince became. His Majesty is merciful and forgiving, but he remains an emperor. Yet even as he sat upon the throne, the imperial consort could not wait to secure a phoenix bride for the crown prince. What did this signify? A coup d'état? Had the imperial consort paused to reflect for even a moment, she would have grasped the sheer folly of this act. But I gave her no time. The emperor and empress shared a profound marital bond. After the empress's passing, His Majesty preferred to leave the imperial consort position vacant rather than elevate the consort to that role. The consort had endured far too long. Her sole hope lay in becoming Empress Dowager, with her maternal clan lacking influence. She had initially gone out of her way to curry favor with me. Now, with this phoenix destiny emerging, she had to seize it tightly. Coincidentally, Miao Ruor was also desperate to prove her identity. She brought the consort's private jade pendant into the open. It became common knowledge. The emperor ordered a thorough investigation into those spreading the rumor. It didn't take long to trace the source back to the son of a retired imperial physician. The son claimed his father had once treated Prince Zhao, leaving detailed notes. During his own examination of Miao Ruor, he discovered her symptoms perfectly matched his father's records. In his youth, he had traveled as an itinerant doctor and encountered this condition, persistent high fever and unrelenting nightmares. Locals called it the Phoenix Curse. Thus, he had not deliberately spread rumors, but his diagnostic observations had been exploited by those with ulterior motives. This gave rise to the notion of the Phoenix destiny. His Majesty's fury intensified. Prince Zhao, the child he had raised with his own hands, the legitimate son of the Empress, the designated heir apparent. Yet, right under his nose, someone had cursed him. His Majesty dispatched guards to investigate discreetly. Ultimately, beneath the pillow of the matron who had served the imperial consort for years, the Phoenix Curse was discovered. The matron was executed in secret on the spot. These were palace secrets. When Chu Li came to see me, he recounted them as amusing anecdotes. He seemed to have spies everywhere. If not for that accursed poison, which crippled him, he truly would have been a more suitable crown prince than Chu Heng. Don't be sad. I comforted him. Chu Li picked a piece of spare rib for me. What is meant to be will be, what is not meant to be should not be forced. Besides, what I most desired in this life, I have already obtained. I leaned lightly on the armrest of my wheelchair. A pang of sadness washed over me. If only I'd been reborn sooner. The crown prince was confined to his quarters. Father privately asked me if I knew any inside information. I laid out the entire story. Father sighed deeply. The imperial consort was finished. She'd targeted Miao Ruor. The crown prince had a fierce argument with her, which finally secured the antidote. Then she'd stubbornly sent the jade pendant, causing the crown prince to lose the emperor's favor. Now it's been uncovered she was involved in Prince Zhao's disability. To protect Chu Heng, she swore on her life the crown prince knew nothing. Out of years of affection, His Majesty confined her to the cold palace, the very same chamber that held me captive in my past life. Remote, cold, desolate. Who knows when she drew her last breath? I secretly sent her 10 quilts. The emperor turned a blind eye, growing ever more lenient toward me. He despised the imperial consort, yet saw my loyalty and devotion. He turned and bestowed upon me 10 bolts of flowing brocade. I saw Chu Heng again at the Ministry of Rights residence. The minister's son was marrying. I attended at the invitation of the minister's daughter. Chu Heng, meanwhile, was to be betrothed to her. The emperor had decreed the marriage a done deal. After so many days apart, he had grown gaunt. His gaze upon me held complexity, a blend of guilt and longing, burning, searing, just as I had once looked at him. It was somewhat frightening. Een, it's been a long time. I nodded in acknowledgement. Suddenly, he pulled me behind the rockery. As I struggled, I heard him ask, "Did you freeze to death in the end?" I couldn't control my emotions. Hatred surged from my eyes. He met my gaze, pulling a cold, thin smile. Chu Heng had been reborn. This meant all the informational advantage I currently held was instantly leveled. He'd lived longer than me, so his knowledge was bound to be more extensive. I felt like I was about to collapse. Chu Heng stepped forward, supporting me as he cupped my cheeks. Een, I know you hate me. Give me one more chance. This time, you'll be my only empress. Disgusting. Not just his old habits, terrifying. Exactly like his past self. I don't trust you. Chu Heng. I pushed him away, retreated to sit on the side, and gasped for breath. He only watched me, smiling lightly. He was different from the immature Chu Heng of not long ago. The pressure he now exerted on me was no less than that of the emperor. Ignoring my refusal, Chu Heng continued speaking as if to himself. Actually, I realized you loved me the most. After you passed away in my previous life, I grieved for a very long time. Een, this lifetime, no matter what, I refuse to let you go. He coaxed gently. Father's health is failing. Once I ascend the throne, I'll crown you empress immediately. Stop dreaming. I'm marrying Prince Zhao in just over a month. Your ascension is still 3 or 4 years away. Chu Heng spread his hands. Who says father can hold on that long? I couldn't believe it. Have you lost your mind? Wei Nanny possessed 3 phoenix charms, 1 crippled Prince Zhao, 1 harmed Ruar. But what of the 3rd? I did hear the emperor fell ill, but his symptoms are entirely different from theirs. His Majesty merely caught a chill. If you doubt it, go see for yourself in the palace. His nonchalant attitude only deepened my dread. Een, only after you passed did I realize my feelings for Ruor were mere gratitude. My love for you was the real thing. I steadied my nerves and seized the initiative. Since you've shared a secret, I'll share one too. In our past life, the child in Miao Ruor's womb wasn't yours. That's why she could kill her own child with her own hands and frame me for it. Because it was the filthy offspring of an illicit affair. To my surprise, his expression didn't waver. I know. I personally made sure Ruor drank her contraceptive concoction every single time. The future crown prince shouldn't crawl out of a peasant woman's womb. He knew. He knew and still cut my tendons. He knew and still locked me in the cold palace to freeze to death. What kind of devil did I love in my past life? He saw through my thoughts. His tone resigned, as if I were throwing a tantrum, failing to grasp the bigger picture. He said, I had no choice. The late King Zhao left a will. I needed a proper reason to eliminate him. Because he loved you. Upon hearing of your plight, he willingly used the will to save you. Too late. You were already. I seized the moment to issue an edict, confining him for life. They say he copied sutras for your rebirth until his dying breath, still chanting Buddhist verses. A cripple, yet profoundly devoted. I stared fixedly at the handsome man before me. Through him, I glimpsed the future Chuli. His head shaved. He imprisoned himself before the Buddha. Eternal lamps hung from the rafters. Each lamp bore my name, praying for my rebirth in a better life. Chu Heng and the minister's daughter soon wed. That young lady was once so cheerful, we shared tea and wine during the autumn hunt. Yet on her wedding day, her face held not a trace of joy, as if she were not heading to the Eastern Palace, but to a grave. I fell gravely ill. Sleeplessness, vomiting. Each day brought unbearable dread. Chu Li stayed by my bedside constantly. In my delirium, I often mistook him for Chu Heng. I would lunge at him, choking his neck. He would gently take my hands, fold them together, and rest them on his knees. Within the palace, the emperor lay critically ill, with court physicians taking turns at his bedside. Father could not summon the imperial physicians, so he turned to folk remedies. He brought in the doctor who had diagnosed the phoenix curse. He prescribed a remedy, and I finally came to my senses. I clung to Chu Li and wept bitterly. He was a noble prince, graceful and elegant. He held the emperor's will in his hands. He could have lived a life of leisure and happiness forever, yet he wasted the imperial decree for my sake. For a mere corpse, even if reborn, even if the crown prince's faction was severely weakened, still, one move was miscalculated, still, victory was impossible. The crown prince attended the emperor day and night, never leaving his side. Court and country alike praised him. I hid in my room like a turtle. When Chu Li came, I burrowed into his embrace. I spoke scarcely at all. After feeding me medicine, he stroked my forehead with a look of pity. We haven't lost yet. I've given up on myself. There's no hope. Chu Heng is a madman. He stroked my head as he always did, speaking slowly. The phoenix curse. Isn't truly incurable. I froze. Father is safe for now. Don't worry. But Chu Heng said. Don't worry. Do what you must. Even if we fail, we'll just be star-crossed lovers. Chu Li was right. The worst outcome, holding hands and dying together. I've already died once. As long as it's not freezing to death, I fear nothing. The daughter of the Minister of Rights, now Crown Princess, is named Sun Ro. She was imprisoned within the Crown Prince's residence. The cause was her deliberate punishment of consort Miao. It nearly caused a miscarriage. Miao Ruo's tactic truly never fails. Security at the Eastern Palace is lax. Most guards were likely transferred to the Imperial Palace by Chu Heng. I slipped into the Eastern Palace with little effort. Sun Ro knelt on the ground, offering tea to Miao Ruo. Absurd. Miao Ruo hesitated for a long time before accepting the tea. Sun Ro flung the cup to the floor. The matron stepped forward to slap her, but I intervened just in time. Miao Ruo grew flustered. How did you get in? Where are the guards? Guards. She called out twice, but no one came. Her panic only deepened. I helped Sun Ro to her feet. Since marrying into the Eastern Palace, she hadn't known a single day of happiness. Chu Heng let Miao Ruo torment her, paying no heed whatsoever. Hadn't the imperial prince's consort hanged herself, dragging her family down with her, she wouldn't have wanted to live at all. Her thoughts mirrored mine from my past life exactly. That's why I understood her. Please escort the consort to the palace. Miao Ruo resisted, but several maids forced her into the carriage. She dared not struggle, fearful of startling the children in the mansion. She could only obediently become my hostage. Chu Heng had already lost his mind. If he had any weakness left, it could only be Miao Ruo. Therefore, she must remain firmly in my grasp. I gave Sun Ro a few instructions. Her gaze gradually shifted from terror to resolve. Rest assured, I shall not fail in my mission. I climbed into the carriage, sharing the space with Miao Ruo. She shrieked again. Shut up, or I'll draw a flower on your face right now. She frantically covered her mouth. The woman before me now bore little resemblance to the ruthless consort Miao of my past life. The crown prince won't let you off, she threatened. I ignored her. I ordered Li Qi to drive faster. Compared to Chu Heng, her threats carried little weight. Sure enough, we were stopped at the palace gates. His Majesty is gravely ill. By the crown prince's decree, no one may enter. The guards at the gate were dutifully doing their job. Bringing Miao Ruo along had indeed been a wise choice. I signaled to Li Ji. She understood and coldly snorted. How dare you block the carriage of the crown prince's consort? Concubine? Phoenix had appointed Miao Ruo as his consort. the crown prince's most cherished favorite. Seeing their hesitation, Li Qi snapped. The consort is carrying his child. I pressed the blade against Miao Ruor's abdomen. She leaned out the carriage window. I've come to visit the crown prince. The guards finally allowed us through. Miao Ruor exhaled a long breath. Earlier, the tip of my blade had already sliced through her outer robe. The palace gates were swarming with patrolling guards. One face stood out as familiar. It was the man who had rescued me from the fire that day. Li Ji's childhood sweetheart. He slipped over, his expression grave. The emperor is gravely ill. The crown prince is attending to him. My heart sank. Had Chu Li not made it in time? That shouldn't be possible. He'd left before me. Cold sweat drenched my palms. That madman Chu Heng, he wouldn't have attacked him directly. Would he? Miao Ruor hadn't caught our words. But seeing my ashen face, she couldn't resist gloating. What? The crown prince values me more. Doesn't he? I couldn't bear to look at this fool. She still thought I was competing for his favor. Go announce to the crown prince, consort Miao requests an audience. I instructed the young eunuch, pointing toward the bedchamber. The eunuch hesitated. I shot Miao Ruor a glance. Seems the crown prince doesn't value you much either. Miao Ruor snapped. Hurry! I'll plead for any consequences with the crown prince. She was practically more anxious than I was. She desperately wanted to outshine me in front of him. When Chu Heng emerged, he wore the crown prince's ceremonial robes. Miao Ruor lunged forward to assert her claim. I yanked her back. My dagger flashed, pressing against her throat. Her shrill scream pierced the air. Chu Heng's gaze locked on me. Een. Come. Not now, Your Highness. May I request permission to visit His Majesty? He shook his head. Not allowed. Then I'll kill her. My grip on the blade tightened. A crimson trail appeared on Miao Ruor's neck. She dared not cry out again. Her eyes filled with grievance as she stared at Chu Heng. Chu Heng chuckled softly. He took a bow and arrow from a guard, aiming it at Miao Ruor. The hurt in her eyes instantly turned to terror. I could feel her trembling. Crown Prince, Miao Ruor whispered. I didn't believe Chu Heng would actually pull the trigger. It was just a bluff. Without hesitation, he released the arrow. The tip veered downward, striking Miao Ruor's instep. The pain forced her to her knees. Blood soaked through my shoes and socks. I froze in place. The dagger fell to the ground. I couldn't believe it. Een. Look. I avenged you. In my past life, it was her who sowed discord between us, leading me to hurt you. He approached me step by step, then crouched down, pulling out a handkerchief to wipe my shoe. He was the one who severed my Achilles tendon. Now he wants to shift the blame onto others? Not a chance. I drew another dagger from my waist and plunged it fiercely toward Chu Heng's throat. Miao Ruor saw it clearly but made no move to stop me. Chu Heng shifted his body slightly, and the dagger embedded itself in his shoulder. He seized my wrist, his eyes crimson. Een. You actually tried to kill me. Knowing resistance was futile, I embraced recklessness. I've always wanted to kill you. Every moment spent with you fills me with utter disgust. Chu Heng's left hand was drenched in crimson. The eunuch attempted to bandage him, but he waved him away. It's fine. I'll make you love me again. For this lifetime alone, you shall be my only empress. Miao Ruor, hearing this, forced herself to crawl to Chu Heng's side. Your Highness, you promised to marry me. Her face streaked with tears. You said I'd be your only legitimate wife. Chu Heng was indifferent. Ruor, whom did I promise? You, or your sister? Miao Ruor, struck dumb, collapsed to the ground. I'm carrying your child. Chu Heng, you can't abandon me. She clutched her belly, her final bargaining chip. Chu Hang's gaze bordered on pity. Ruer, don't you understand? I care nothing for the child. Nor for you. You replaced your sister to accompany me to the Eastern Palace. Feigned muteness. Bribed the imperial physician to swap the contraceptive potion. I could forgive all that. With each word Chu Heng spoke, Miao Ruer's face paled further. But I explicitly ordered. Yining was cold sensitive. I told you to prepare extra charcoal and quilts. How dare you? Deliberately freeze her to death? Leaving me no chance to see her one last time. She reached out to grab Chu Heng, but he swept her hand away. I didn't. I found it laughable. Chu Heng, are you pretending to be some romantic hero? He gritted his teeth and drew his dagger. Blood spattered. I took a half step back. It splashed onto Miao Ruer's head. The successive blows knocked her unconscious. Yining, Chu Li is in my hands. Agree to marry me, and I'll release him. I took a deep breath. Just as I thought. It's unnecessary. When the king of Zhao meets his end, I shall follow him in death. Not a moment more shall I linger. His eyes held only desolation. How could this be? You should only love me. I've lost you. He looked at Miao Ruer lying on the ground. A counterfeit, and yet she killed my empress. These words were treasonous. The guards paid no heed. It was clear, this place was entirely under Chu Hang's control. He clamped my wrist. Wait. Once the sun rises, I shall be the new emperor. We never watched the sunrise together. Then please, Your Majesty, find another beauty to watch the sunrise with. Don't bother this prince's consort. A wheelchair emerged from the shadows. Chu Li beckoned to me. I immediately flew toward him. How dare you escape? Wicked son! The eunuch supported the emperor as he appeared at the palace door. Chu Hang's expression shifted slightly. Father? You dare stage a coup? The emperor, enraged, spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Heng shook his head. This isn't a coup. After all, you had no choice. Chu Li embraced me, whispering comfort. Overwhelmed with joy, I wept. I was already prepared to die with you. Chu Li kissed my forehead. Yining, would you be willing to be empress? I shook my head frantically. I don't want that. I want to be with you. Then, would you be willing to be my empress? I didn't understand what he meant. Chu Li placed his hands on my shoulders. Slowly, he stood up. Chu Hang's expression finally changed drastically. Whether it was a palace coup or poisoning, his greatest advantage was having no rivals. Among the princes in the capital today, only he and Prince Zhao remained. One afflicted with illness cannot become emperor. Thus, until the emperor appeared, he remained unfazed. Just as he said, the emperor had no choice. And now, as I supported Chu Li step by step toward the emperor, he was utterly panicked. Strike! He ordered. But the guards did not move. Your humble servant comes to rescue your majesty. The general arrived with his armored troops. Majestic and dashing, Sun Ro trotted to my side and clung tightly to me. Uncle initially refused to enter the palace, calling it treason. Fortunately, this guard can testify. The guard scratched his head, exchanging glances with Li Qi. He lowered his head in embarrassment. He was the lowest-ranking guard, good for nothing except his agility. It was only thanks to him that I could slip out under the noses of the Eastern Palace guards. Li Qi's eyes brimmed with pride. The Crown Prince plotted rebellion. He shall be imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice for life. Prince Zhao shall be appointed Crown Prince and temporarily exercise imperial authority. His Majesty's decree. I still felt dazed. It was over already? I had actually defeated Chu Heng, who possessed the memories of my past life. As guards restrained him, His eyes held surprisingly little resentment. He gazed deeply at me. I truly regret it now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have rushed to seize power so hastily. You know, if I had just bided my time quietly until the end, the throne would have been mine. His Majesty had already secretly summoned the princes to the capital. Your haste and urgency were for your own sake. I mercilessly shattered the mask of affection he thought he wore. He gave a bitter smile. I couldn't tell if it was resentment or regret. Chuli arranged a carriage to take me back to my residence to rest. He still had matters to attend to. His Majesty was gravely ill. Standing for even a moment caused him to cough incessantly. Sunro took my arm as I surveyed the palace walls. A daze settled over me. Would these walls, these courtyards, this supreme dragon throne, all belong to Chuli from now on? And me, did I truly wish to be empress again? I lay awake all night. The candles in my parents' chambers burned through the night as well. At dawn, Chuli crouched beside my bed, carrying the chill of the early hours. Een, you still haven't answered me. Answer me first, why are your legs unharmed? Because from the moment I opened my eyes this lifetime, I've been seeking an antidote. The imperial physicians couldn't solve it because they didn't know it was a poisonous insect. Once they knew, it wasn't entirely beyond their reach. Chuli slipped off his coat and squeezed into my bed. In my past life. Don't look so shocked. Chuli wrapped his arms around me, pulling the quilt higher. Everyone else gets reborn, why not me? He even sounded aggrieved. So you played along, pretending to be crippled all this time. He nodded. I was terrified of how your past life ended. That's why I begged Father Emperor to betroth you to me. This marriage was actually Chu Li's doing. No wonder Chu Hong looked so shocked at the birthday banquet. My eyes stung. Chu Hong said you left a will. What did it say? If Chu Hong proves unworthy, appoint another emperor. So that's how it was. His Majesty had paved the entire path for Chu Li. If not for me, he could have reigned supreme. My voice cracked with tears as I feigned ignorance of the outcome. Then why did it fail? It didn't fail, it was abandoned. Chu Hong holds your corpse. Chu Li always spoke softly and deliberately. This was the first time I sensed his gritted teeth. I held him tighter. I confined myself to the Buddhist hall, praying for you to be reborn. Thankfully, the Buddha granted my wish. I couldn't fathom how he endured all these years. He silently watched me all along, seeing me charge headlong for Chu Hong. His only intervention was asking for my hand in marriage. He must have long prepared for my refusal. Fortunately, I too was reborn then. At last. I didn't disappoint him again. So, will you answer my question? I traced his newly sprouted stubble, shaking my head slowly. I refuse. Just as Chu Li said. The imperial physician recognized it as a poisonous insect. Preparing the antidote was no difficult task. They used Chu Li's blood as the catalyst and quickly concocted the medicinal decoction. After the antidote took effect, His Majesty grew increasingly refreshed and alert. The only sour note was Chu Li's renewed refusal to become crown prince. Who wouldn't want to be crown prince? Everyone covets the position, why alone does he refuse? The emperor couldn't bear to pressure Chu Li, so he could only vent his frustration to me. My gaze drifted. The emperor is robust and vigorous, why the rush to name a crown prince? Who knows? Perhaps he'll pass away unexpectedly one day. My face paled, and I immediately knelt. The emperor sighed. Yin, I know it's not that Chu Li doesn't want to be crown prince, it's that you refuse to be crown princess. I dared not speak. The empress and I were young when we wed. My greatest regret is taking many consorts to balance court politics. Lear is different. With the court stable, he can fulfill his promise to you, one lifetime, one partner. Your Majesty? I was startled and uncertain. He pulled me up. lecturing me like an old father. My word is law. This life, Prince Zhao shall take no concubines. Even if he becomes crown prince or emperor, this decree must be upheld. This is also what Lear desires. Chu Li and I were wed. All the noble ladies of Xinjing came to the palace to see me off. Sun Ro and Li Shi supported me on either side, guiding me into the bridal sedan chair. In the distance, I saw guards escorting Miao Ruor out of the palace. She limped, clutching her empty womb. The emperor, in his mercy, permitted her to return home. But the child must be aborted. She had always been ruthless. In the end, she chose to save herself. The wedding night, Prince Chu Li, the crown prince, was born to the late empress. A severe illness in childhood left him with paralysis in both legs. A lifelong disability. The young crown prince's eyes were red-rimmed. Yin, after waiting 2 lifetimes, I've finally married you. I took the initiative to kiss his lips. Warm and soft. Many years after Chu Li ascended the throne, I remained childless. The imperial physician diagnosed me with excessive coldness in my body, rendering me unable to bear an heir. I took the initiative to select several beauties for Chu Li. After court, he dismissed them all from the palace. An emperor without an heir is a grave matter. Chu Li grasped my wrist, telling me not to worry. The next day, we selected a young prince from the imperial clan to come to the capital. We chose a plump, fair-skinned boy to raise by our side. The little chubby grew into a graceful young man, gentle as jade. I grew older. One bitterly cold winter day, after catching a chill from the wind, I collapsed unconscious. I never woke again. Chu Li smiled as he arranged my funeral rites. Then he followed me in death. The official history records. Half a month after the death of the empress, known for her reverence and virtue, the emperor passed away. Life and death followed each other. The end.